Welcome back, bantwana benkosi. Ungalahli ithemba lakho, fruits of your toil. In this segment, we are going to discuss the World Economic Forum report, which was released in January, in fact, Future of Jobs report. We thought on the occasion of Workers' Day, we zoom into this report and try to tease it out. If you want to find the link to it, we've tweeted it on my timeline, on my Twitter, at Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. You can find the full report there. I'm joined by Dr. Sean Kruger from the Center of the Future of Work at the University of Pretoria. Prof, thanks very much for creating time.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks indeed for taking off on Workers' Day to come and speak to us. So are you a descendant of Paul Kruger?
I'm not sure, but sometimes the surname does get me into trouble and sometimes not. At least it's easy to spell.
Don't worry. You're not in trouble on this show.
At least.
Yeah. Just a quick... the idea is to basically allow the listeners a sort of insight into some of the key findings, as it were, of the report. I'm going to begin with the obvious question of if you could basically say, firstly, how it was compiled.
Okay, so this is a very good question. Their methodology, they speak to organizations. So first and foremost, formal economy workers. They talk to multinationals and business across the world and collect data from those businesses and then compile those reports based on their needs and their impact. So a key thing of this report is it looks at formal work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a key differentiator, especially when looking at Africa.
By formal work, is it permanent contracts?
So when we speak about formal work, for in simple terms, it's essentially, are they registered for tax?
Mm.
Do they contribute to the economy? And can their contributions essentially be tracked to economic value add?
I see. And the volumes of this, are you able to tell us like from a survey point of view, how many of these organizations did they speak to generate this information?
So to my knowledge, the last report was over 11,000 companies that they worked for, representing around 27 million people. So it is a very good representative sample that they've actually used to snapshot.
Okay. And key findings?
There are several. So let's look at the big one first. They expect that 22% of jobs will be impacted by macro trends. They estimate that 92 million jobs will be displaced. 92 million. However, interestingly enough, they say that 170 million will be created. So net effect is a good one for us, which is a very good thing. However, in that, what they do say is we do need to reskill people to ensure that they actually can take advantage of those new job opportunities.
When you say macro trends, and as I said, we're speaking in a very general platform here. What are the macro trends? What do they define as a macro trends that will sort of affect jobs?
Okay, so that's an excellent question. So macro trends, first we look at the economy. So the trade wars of the US and everything that's impacting our economy, GDP. But what it also looks at is digital access. So think about 5G, fiber infrastructure. Do our people have access to at the very least internet, and what's the affordability? They also look at macro trends like the rising cost of living. So can businesses afford to employ people and to what extent? They also look at climate change. Climate change is a very large macro trend because it has cascading effects on industry investments. They also look at the age of our workforce. So in Africa, we have the youngest youth cohort coming in by 2030 on the planet, whereas other European countries are actually declining in terms of their youth and don't have enough youth to fulfill those people who are retiring. And another macroeconomic trend is they, of course, look at geographic fragmentation. So where are people based? And of course, current wars that are happening across the globe.
Okay, if you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. We're having a conversation with Dr. Sean Kruger from the Center of Future of Work at the University of Pretoria, unpacking the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs Report 2025. I don't know, Prof, if you've got the report in front of you. I'm going to do page by page and ask you to sort of help us make sense of some of these segments. And at this stage, in the introduction, page 8, I was wondering, they say that youth unemployment rates tell another story of the labor market health. While the global youth unemployment rate has ranked the total global unemployment rate, it remains elevated at 13%. Assessing rates of youth not in employment, education or training highlights disparities. And then they say this rate of youth not in employment, education or training is flat at 21.7%. It stands at just 10.1% for higher income economies, rising to 17% for upper middle class income ones. The rate then jumps to 25.9% for lower income economies and 27.6% for low income ones. Is this normal, like over the years? Or is this something that is specifically of this timeline that they're investigating?
So it's a good question. Ultimately, what it's come down to is in the past, we have seen that first world countries' youth unemployment does differentiate, especially during economic downturns like the 2008 crisis, the dot-com bubble. But over time, unfortunately, lower income regions have historically always been at a bit of a disadvantage. The big problems coming in now is we're talking in percentages, but let's talk in numbers. Because you're talking about 20%. Okay, great. But whereas that 20% used to represent perhaps 1 million per youth in South Africa, 20% million youth in South Africa, you're now looking at more towards 14, 15 million persons. So even though the percentage has changed, the number of people affected has increased quite a lot. And I think that's a key thing around unemployment. Whereas also what they also factor in here is they consider people unemployed still looking for work as part of that to reduce that figure. So in that sense, if you're unemployed but actively seeking, it becomes very complicated. But to answer your question, historically, we have seen that higher income regions have lower unemployment. Lower income regions continue to have higher unemployment. The big issue now over time and looking forward is our aging demographic is shifting more towards youth. So even if the percentage stays the same, the number of people is adversely affected, which is quite high.
I see. But I mean, this is the youth that is not in employment, they are not in education institutions or even training. I mean, this is literally the reserve army, which possibly means sections of them will not even be able to be reskilled. Is that assumption correct?
So this is where the assumption becomes very difficult. We estimate, and this is a rough figure, for us to employ every youth currently in South Africa, our GDP needs to grow to about 10%. We're currently hovering under 2%. So, I mean, that's a massive jump to ensure everyone has work. Now, to answer your question, it's an interesting one, because if you look at the larger world, what about those populations that have people retiring? Those roles are unfulfilled. But if they can get skilled workers, not necessarily from their country, but imported to do the work, that shifts the conversation. Because ultimately, at this point in time, we can't employ all our youth, which is really, it's really unfortunate. But what happens if we could reskill those youth to perhaps work abroad at differing opportunities? Then suddenly our unemployment could drop. The trick is there, the right skills, and of course, the willingness to leave the country.
Okay, and we move now to a section that speaks to drivers of labor market transformation. And here there is a sort of prediction of what you called earlier macro trends that would affect the labor sort of needs. And the first one they point to is technological change. On page 11, firstly, they speak about generative AI, the need for generative AI skills. Can you explain what those skills are?
All right. So I'm just going to quickly, just for everyone, artificial intelligence has been around since the 1950s. But generative AI now is where you can engage with artificial intelligence like never before. It's a lot more accessible. So the generative AI skills they're referring to is, A, can you use it? Can you apply it in your everyday work to be better? And then, of course, how can you use it to create several business opportunities? This then extends of, all right, how can you perhaps develop solutions, integrate it into existing systems, develop back-end coding? And what we also look at from a jobs perspective with generative AI skills is ethical usage and ethical integration of this generative AI into our everyday systems. So if I can give you a quick example, think about a chatbot. You know, when you go into your bank or something like that, you ask it a few questions. Now, that's a chatbot that someone built. Generative AI skills is, how can we make that chatbot better? What kind of questions are people asking to make sure the system's better?
Can you give a practical example of like the sort of integration? I know we're going to have to repeat this at a later stage, but I mean, as you know, the page 11 says 86% of employers that were interviewed expect AI and information processes to transform their businesses by 2030. So what does it look like if, let's say, I'm a ordinary worker in a construction site? What would be a skill expected with regards to interacting with generative AI?
Okay. So if you look at a construction worker, think about what they do. Yes, is it now a person measure working laying bricks? Or is it someone who does timesheets, schedules appointments, phones their suppliers?
Yeah.
Now, in that same report, they estimate that 33% of those work tasks can now be done by automation and generative AI. So instead of someone having to go make timesheets, update the schedules on the construction sites, phone the suppliers and get lists, they need to learn how to ask generative AI to build those templates for them, check them for them, run potential scenarios and what would be a better cost. So what that does is it saves the construction worker on the ground a lot of time if they can use that in their everyday work.
And what types of professions? I mean, you mentioned already, and they make this point in page 18 in terms of the jobs outlook. 92 million current jobs are going to be displaced by technological changes and some of the macro trends. What kind of jobs do you imagine generative AI and information processes will definitely displace?
So do you want jobs specifically?
Yes. I mean, and you could give a concrete example in our own economy.
Yes. So think about a cashier at a bank. First and foremost, in South Africa, a big one that's at risk is our administrative assistants. You know, you ask your admin, send an email, set up a timesheet, those kind of things. With generative AI, especially in our larger corporate institutions, those things can be automated. Or someone can now add it to their job because it would take 5 to 10 minutes if you can use generative AI. Let's think about a telemarketer. Now, in South Africa, telemarketers is quite a big job opportunity. But as we are moving forward with customer service, where our customers go to websites to talk to or chatbots, or even if you phone in, our telemarketers are very at risk here because now with AI, when you phone, you hear a voice,
Yeah.
but that's not even a human being that you're talking to. Several businesses are already doing that.
So
So
you could have a
telemarketers are big
situation
risk.
of a complete wipeout of what are these call centers, because Chat GTP or Croc, Siri could basically. I mean, what are we speaking? How many jobs are we speaking of call centers?
So call centers are a very big, I can't give you a number, but it's a top 10. I think it's number 8 if I speak under correction. That's the biggest risk. And if you're talking top 10 in the global world, a lot of our call centers are managed by, of course, large institutions which follow multinational trends. So you're looking at not potentially a complete wipeout, but a very significant job loss in those segments because it would be cheaper, and those AIs, generative AI answering bots can be available 24/7.
Yeah. We'll come back to this. I mean, they've also have alongside the question of automation, not just artificial intelligence, but the jobs that will immediately be completely automated with very little to no human contribution. Please just outline what kind of jobs will those be and what's the predicted percentage of automation by this report.
Okay, so let's look at industries. In that sense, automation, you can remember you can only automate a system that's functional. But automation enabled by AI, the biggest risk here is, of course, manufacturing. So if you look at manufacturing, that is a big one because a lot of people can be removed from the production line. Not to mention things like automation in banking. Think about your tellers, your legal aids and everything, because those repetitive tasks can be removed. So if you have to look at it at a percentage, you can look at in South Africa, about 35% of position have the potential of automation in the next 7 years. 35%. It's around 5.7 million jobs, which is a very stark statistic.
Never miss any conversation. Download the podcast on power987.co.za and listen at your convenient time.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, Tetenge Report, Future of Jobs by the World Economic Forum. And I've got online Dr. Sean Kruger from the Center for the Future of Work at the University of Pretoria. Prof, page 24 of the report, I think for the benefit of everyone to say out loud the largest declining jobs, and then what are these jobs that are predicted over the next 5 years to be the largest growing, so that I think our listeners have a sense of where to look for the future.
Fantastic. So largest declining work in that sense is first and foremost cashiers and ticket clerks. So when you go to a parking lot and ask for a ticket, largest decline by far. The second, and what for me is quite scary in South Africa, is administrative assistants and executive secretaries, because several of their work, like taking minutes, doing ordering, doing supply sheets or extra tasks, second biggest job that can be lost. Then it goes to, interesting enough, cleaners and housekeepers, although that's an interesting debate statistic that we're investigating now from a South African perspective.
Yeah.
Then printing, accountants, transportation, bank tellers, and data entry clerks, just some of them that are looking to decline. So
Yes.
if you look at those, think about those people. Those are people that you see, that you work with every day. And these are jobs that are being replaced because of automation and generative AI in every day.
Yeah. And it seems to me that it also includes, curiously, accountants and auditors.
Yes. So this one might get me in the hot seat in terms of a lot of debate. But let's look at it from a big perspective and let's narrow it down to every day. if you look at a big perspective, Nigeria overtook our economy as one of the biggest in Africa, primarily because of fintech. Now, in that sense, fintech is taking over a lot of things like bookkeeping, payroll, clerks, and your accountants who check everything, because everything is digitized, so it can be quickly tracked and traced, which means that from an accounting perspective and bookkeeping and payroll, the number of jobs is decreasing because it's automated.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, what's interesting is if you now look at it from, all right, someone needs to check the fintech system, develop the fintech system. Those jobs now are increasing, but you need accounting skills to be able to build those systems, interestingly enough. So, it's quite an interesting one on that.
Okay. I was also very struck by the fact that something like graphic designers, is also under a huge threat. Security guards is another largest declining job globally, which over the next 5 years we may see even here with robotics, automation, and generative AI going out completely. But it's fine. Let's go to the largest growing jobs where there's still opportunity for more growth.
Okay, so yes, it is always a negative, but first and foremost is farm workers, laborers, and agricultural workers is seeing the highest increase. And an interesting driver around this is climate change adaptation and food security. Because think about it this way. In China, they're having a massive issue of they call it desertification. So the deserts are encroaching into existing farmlands. So they need a lot more workers to be able to work the farms in more effective and efficient ways, not only because of food security, because we all do need to eat, but also because we need to adapt to the rapid approaches of climate change. Second to that is light truck delivery drivers, because we're seeing a lot of expansion to e-commerce and digital access of our users. We can now buy things online, but we've become a bit. Yes, we've become a bit spoiled and we don't want to drive to the shops anymore. So delivery workers in that is very high. As always, as been for the last 10 years, software and application developers, because someone needs to build the AI and automation system. Someone needs to drive the digital transformation. And then, of course, let's talk about construction workers, because you did mention it earlier. We are building smart cities, not only in South Africa, but across the globe. But at the end of the day, someone needs to still build that smart city. So as we're looking at urbanization, green talent and green buildings, and more people investing in infrastructure, we're seeing construction workers continue to have a high drive in terms of need.
I see. And interesting, some of the old professions in the world will survive. Nursing, social workers, teachers, as low as kindergarten and secondary school teachers, project managers, and then the restaurant business, food and beverage service workers.
Booming.
Yeah, it looks like these are the jobs of the future.
Yes, and it's interesting you mention of jobs of old, whereas you think, you just want to become a nurse. Nursing is still has remained interesting, critical across the forum reports. A lot of these kind of things is because of aging populations. People are starting to retire and enter that. So nursing and professional healthcare continues to be now and far into the future a key work. Let's look at food and beverage services. Because of how we're looking at automation, those kind of things, it increases our time. We're looking at more capacity to go out and eat in those kind of things. But again, we need to look back at the macroeconomic trend. Can people afford to go out to eat? So, it's quite an interesting one there.
Yeah. And I like the sort of coverage of human-machine collaboration on page 26. They project that 19% is projected to derive from expanded human-machine collaboration. And they've got a table of on page 28 of expected shifts in human share of work tasks, delivering total firm output driven by automation versus augmentation in industry. But there seems to be this new frontier of machine-human collaboration. Please address us on specifically the human-machine frontier.
Right. So your human machine frontier is essentially how are you using technology to be able to do your job better and to do new work. So that's what it comes down to. But what it means is us as humans across all those industries that you're seeing on page 28, even onto page 29, you need to have at least a certain level of digital literacy. Because if you can't use a computer or the new systems as and when to understand how to make your job better, that's where that human interaction with computers is going on to, is how can we use these technologies to fulfill our tasks?
Yeah.
Back in the day, it's when Microsoft Word and Office and PowerPoint came out. How could people use those tools to be better at their jobs? The difference is now we're just working with a lot more smarter systems and tools so we can do more with a lot less. And in that sense, if you're looking at those with the lowest integration of automation is medical and healthcare. But interestingly enough, if you look at oil, gas, and chemicals, which are, quite intense knowledge fields, you're looking at 113, 146%, exceeding capacity of what's needed.
If you've just joined us, this is Power Talk with me, Mbuyiseni and Ndlozi. We are speaking the future of jobs, taking our key from the Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum. And I've got online Dr. Sean Kruger from the Center for the Future of Jobs at the University of Pretoria. I want to go to page 34, disruption of skills. I see that they've got us as South Africa that in the table there that about 36% of the skill set in this country will be disrupted according to their predictions, but they've got an average of about 39% across the world. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, that is in fact correct. And if I can make it quite nice for you, think of the world if it had 100 people in it. I know it doesn't, but imagine it had 100 people.
Yeah.
On average, how the world sees it is 59 people of the 100 people already employed. So that's already employed, not our graduates, already employed, would need retraining. 59 out of that 100. 29 of those people can be upskilled in their current role. 19 would be for different roles, and 11 full risk being left behind. So if you look at South Africa's disruption to skills by economy, because that looks at 2025 to 2030, it's interesting there because in that sense, 36% of our people would need to be reskilled and upskilled to stay in existing roles. But to think about our demographic, construction, agriculture, mining, that's why it's slightly lower, because those core skills are still needed in those roles. And that's why we're slightly below.
Yeah, please just maybe for the benefit of the listeners again, on page 35, they've got a graph there which details the core skills, a share of employers who consider these skills to be core for the workforce, that what is expected, what kind of skills one should be having in general. Can you take us through all those 26 core skills that are projected to be of serious need if you're going to get a job?
Okay. So first and foremost is analytical thinking. So when we speak about analytical thinking, you must think about that in the sense of, they sometimes even call it thinking about thinking. How does things work? And more importantly, if you can use analytical thinking, it's how you can break down complex information into easier parts. Can you see relationship patterns and cause effect? And what this comes down to is, how can you use technology to solve and break down those information to make it easier to understand? That's why analytical thinking is right at the top. Then it comes down to, and this is also a very big thing about employers' expectations, resilience, flexibility, and agility. Because think about your work. How much pressure do you deal with every day? How much time must you have to quickly change something, address an email, sort this new system, get this person onboarded? That's second. Because are you resilient to manage these changes? And are you flexible enough to go, all right, I might need to update a certain skill or those kind of things. So essentially it's a skill to upskill yourself.
Yeah.
Third, which remains consistently, is leadership and social influence. We still look to our leaders to this day, but it's how can you bring people along with you if you are going through digital transformation strategy, is your leader able to guide you through it, tell you why you're doing it, and of course, guide you in what's the purpose of this and what's your role? Fourth is creative thinking. Now, creative thinking I think it will always remain, because how can we do things better? How can we take all of these things and make things better, whether it be with technology or be it with technology in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
Then motivation and self-awareness. Now, I'm speaking for myself here, but sometimes I need at least 10 cups of coffee in the morning just to get going.
Yeah.
And in that sense, are you motivated to do what you want to do? Can you get up in the morning and say, right, listen, I've got to check this, I've got to do that? For me, which is quite interesting, is number 6, technological literacy.
Yeah.
Can you use a computer? But beyond that, do you understand how to use a computer for your benefit? Not necessarily not even for your job always, but for yourself. Maybe you want to start a small business. How can I build an e-commerce website? Where would you start?
Okay. I mean, I think I want to juxtapose that, because they seem to have a difference between talent and skilling, or talent and skill, because on page 51, they've got this idea of talent hiring availability by economies, and they table countries, which is basically a share of employers surveyed expecting a positive or negative outlook for talent availability in terms of hiring or firing over the next 5 years. South Africa is there. What is the difference between a talent and a skill?
Okay, so skill is something you can do. Talent is being able to apply that skill for that employer. So let's take the technology skill as an example. Do I have the skill to be able to be technologically literate? Yes, I do. But a talent is using it in a fintech organization or ensuring that my employer can actually do that.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting, in South Africa, we have a bit of a disparity between skills and talent requirements. Now, a big issue around that is a lot of the times, and this is a big thing about companies, is they're not getting the job descriptions right. Because even though you have the skill, the job description doesn't always specifically align to your skill set. So sometimes we overlook talent. The big issue here in terms of talent hiring availability, specifically on that graph that you're looking at, is in South Africa, a lot of the times, because our education is relatively affordable, we are losing talent to overseas companies because they can pay them more. So we're losing skilled people because we can't pay them. And that's why we're there in that sense. We don't have talent, even though we're training them to be able to have the skill.
Okay. On my part, page 58, we've sort of outlined the bigger picture with regards to what these future jobs will be, how the current ones are going to go out vis-a-vis automation. And I know we have just focused on artificial intelligence, generative AI, as they call it, and automation. But there's still a lot of jobs, and the big thing on the green economy, as it were. I want to look now at the wages, the implications on wages on page 58. Can you address us about what the surveyed companies expect with regards to wages?
Okay, so wages is an interesting one, because stability-wise, they do see wages remaining stable, around 41%. So stable, and that's also relative to inflation. I'd like to say that. Relatively stable in relation also to to inflation. But some of them 7% of them foresee a reduction in wages in that regard. Now, the biggest issue here is smaller companies, because smaller companies foresee that they're going to have to pay their employers more, because as things increase, it becomes more expensive.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for those that have higher numbers of employees. Only 45% expect of them to have that wage increase. So from a wage perspective of paying people salaries, smaller companies appear to be harder hit by the need to increase wages relative to inflation.
I see. This is Power Talk, Bantwana Benkosi. We are speaking the future of jobs. I'm going to take a call, Prof. It's Molapo from Kempton Park. Molapo, welcome to Power Talk.
Hey, Doc, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How do you do?
I'm fine, man. I just wanted to ask the professor there. He said that there's going to be increase in the jobs for delivery drivers. But with the introduction of autonomous vehicles and driverless cars, isn't that over time going to bring a decline in that sector?
Well, we are looking at 2025 to 2030, the next 5 years. Do you think all countries would have legislated autonomous cars? Because an autonomous car, when it's in an accident, who do you blame?
No. But remember, we also starting to have them. I mean, we got autonomous truck 2 years ago in South Africa.
Self-driving cars.
Exactly, yes.
In South Africa?
No, the truck, yes. We've got one that came about 2 years ago.
Okay,
truck, yeah.
Okay, is that all?
But in any case, because we're going there.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Between now and 2030, aren't we going to see a decrease or decline in that sector?
Okay. Thanks very much, Molapo, in Kempton Park. That's the question, Prof. I thought maybe I could also add the reskilling component. In this survey, they just focus on employers, the share that they have in their sort of company, the share they spend of their resources on skilling or reskilling workers. But there's no focus on universities, schools, and all of that. What becomes the role or the impact on education and training with this changing environment and the changing impact that is brought about by automation and generative AI, and again, things like self-driving cars?
All right. I'm going to address the self-driving cars one last, but let's look at education. So us as a university, and there's 26 universities in South Africa and even globally, and there's several global cohorts. We are pushing to ensure that the courses and services that we offer globally ensure that our graduates are employable now and into the future. That's first and foremost. Universities continue to do that, and that role is continued to be played. What's the big disparity here is, so let's focus on higher education first. We are driving the need for relative graduates for roles now and into the future. A big issue that's currently occurring between higher education institutions and employers is a Forbes survey that was done this year notes that Gen Zs have a lack of know-how to work in teams, are too expensive, and that they have poor business etiquette. So in that sense, it's interesting that they have the skill, but they don't necessarily have the global mindset. They say about 57%. 60% say they lack real-world experience. 50% say that they have poor business etiquette. So it's interesting of higher education institutions are pushing, but employers are saying they're not ready for the workforce. But in that sense, we are pushing, and curriculum is being updated in that regard. The problem is, and the big barrier is our speed to upskill. Because by the time that someone's upskilled, they must have core skills that are relevant by the time they graduate. Now, in that sense, let's look at the Department of Basic Education. They are looking to upskill around, there are several alignment points. So think futures thinking, analytical thinking, creativity is being integrated into the curriculum at least, especially STEM sciences. So if you look at current unemployment rates to graduates, the higher someone's qualified, the less chance that they are unemployed. Our big issue from an education perspective is those that we need to reskill in the existing workforce, and with what? Because the World Economic Forum notes, okay, I have an employee, what do I need to reskill them as? And the way that those courses are offered, not everyone who's working can take 3 years off to go do another degree. You know, we don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't have time to do another degree. So now it's like, how are we packaging those courses that people can work and do it, or potentially do it as part of their work? Now, to answer Malapa's question around the delivery drivers.
Yeah.
In China, they have a lot of automated vehicles, specifically in cities. 2 parts to that. They have the data for the automated vehicles, point one. And they also have, of course, people who can develop and code those vehicles. In South Africa, 2025 to 2030 delivery truck drivers are expected to increase because of e-commerce. But what you must also remember around that is a very big driver is money and cost. What does an automated vehicle cost in South Africa? It's cheaper to buy a normal vehicle and hire a driver than to import that vehicle and pay for the full automation and everything on the road, as well as those kind of things. So it's also very much about a monetary question. What is more economically viable? Because in South Africa, relative to the global market, our labor is a lot more affordable.
But it seems to me there is a point to be made about automated cars or autonomous cars, that the transport sector is certainly some aspects of it, like trains, for an example, maybe even planes, those jobs from that perspective in the next 5 years, even in our country, we might see them going on a reduction.
We'll definitely see a shift, but the shift that we'll see is yet to be determined. Because let's say we do see the decline in the number of pilots required, but then you need to think about, okay, maybe flying becomes more affordable and more people are flying. So then it almost balances out in the sense of how many people are still required remains the same, even though more flights are occurring. But I do believe that the transportation sector does need to monitor these things. And like you said, we need to think about what happens in a case of if a truck goes rogue.
Yeah,
I know there are several protective protocols.
I mean, it seems to me you would have to legislate. You would have to have an actual act of parliament as to the regulation of self-driving cars. There's no rules. There's no traffic regulations at this point in time for such a technology. I don't see it in the next 5 years. If it is, it will be towards the end of the 5 years, I imagine.
And not even self-driving cars, more around self-driving trucks. Because think about our transportation sector. It employs thousands and if not millions of people in the truck driving industry. And those are specialized, but where they drive, we first need to collect data on where they're driving and the conditions in that. Because in terms of automation vehicles, in cities, it's not such a problem. But what about rural areas where there's not sufficient data on those roads that exist or do not exist?
Okay. Thanks very much, Doc. The hour is never enough, but I think we've done justice to the Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum of 2025. If you want the link, Bantwana Benkosi, we've tweeted it on our official Twitter account. But thanks very much, Prof, for creating time on Workers' Day. I thought it's fitting that we unpack this report for the benefit of our listeners about the future of jobs. But thanks very much for creating time.